To start with for chapter 7, oops, share.
Oh my gosh. Sorry. I
That's
couldn't
okay.
figure out how to join the meeting because
Oh,
I forgot to hit join meeting button and I was like, I'm the only one in the room.
oh. I'm glad you found it. Sometimes that happens when I send you into groups. Some people forget that there's a link there to join the group, but okay. So chapter 7 to start with, we're going to do the correct part first because you need to understand how to explain slope, y-intercept, and understand a line before we can do it. So we're going to switch the class. Okay. A linear equation. A linear equation, it's called linear because the graph is a straight line, and it can be written as y equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept. It's the value when x equals 0. It can be called the fixed cost, initial amount, those two are the most common. Startup fee. M is the slope. It's the change in y over the change in x. They also call it rise over run. For the most part, I don't think we'll be graphing any by hand, but we'll need to explain them. So we'll use this more than rise over run. The slope is a rate of change. Miles per gallon, dollars per hour. It's a rate. Per gallon, per hour, per month, per year. It's a rate. And the slope is attached to the x value because that's the rate. So if it's dollars per hour, then x is hours. If it's miles per gallon, then x is the number of gallons. But m is always attached to the x, b is the number or constant by itself. So a constant is a number by itself. The slope is always attached to x. And it's always when y is by itself. Has to be in this form. So if we have y equals 6x plus 5, what's the slope?
6x.
Well, almost. You only want the 6.
Oh, okay.
And the b, or the y-intercept?
5.
How about this one? Y equals 2 minus 1/3 x.
Negative 1/3 is the slope.
Yep. So when you have a negative sign, you want to bring it with it. Remember, it doesn't matter what order they're in, the slope is always with the x variable. And so then it's a negative 1/3, which means the positive 2 is with b. Now, it doesn't always have to be an x and a y. We could use this for cost and this for hours. Maybe you make $10 per hour. What would the slope be?
It would be 10.
And the y-intercept?
I don't see one.
Exactly. Since there isn't one, it must be 0.
Oh, okay.
So if you're working at a job and you're making $10 an hour, then it would be this, because you don't have a startup amount. Where you would in like a paycheck would be maybe you work on interest. And so you make a flat rate of $500 a week plus 10% on your sales. But when you're just working hourly, then it's $10 an hour. There wouldn't be a startup fee or startup salary. And so then your y-intercept is 0.
What is B equivalent to again?
Say that again.
What is B equivalent again?
B is the y-intercept. It is when x is 0. So, well, we haven't. In this case, if you don't work any hours, you don't make any money because B is 0.
Okay. That's gonna take a while for me to get.
I couldn't hear you. It broke up.
Oh, yeah, I just never been good with slopes, so.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do some examples using them.
It would help me a lot if there was like a graph to compare it to, and you showed us like what to plug in where.
We use the equations. We don't usually use the graph in this part.
Okay.
Let's look at the equations, and then if we need the graph, we'll do them. But I think that I don't think we need the equation to plug into. I don't know that we want the graph. We'll try it out without it, and then if we need it, we'll do them. If you rent a car, for $25 plus $3 per mile. So let's first write a linear equation. So we want to rent a car for $25 plus, it costs $25 plus $3 per mile. So just to take the car off of the lot is $25, and then you pay $3 for every mile that you drive. Our equation, y equals mx plus b, means we need to find the slope and the y-intercept. The slope is a rate. The y-intercept is a fixed cost.
So if the slope is a rate, $25 per 3 miles?
No, I didn't put the dollar sign, but it's $3 per mile.
Okay, that's the rate then, right?
Yep.
So it would be 3. X. Then what was B?
B is the fixed cost or the startup fee or the initial amount.
Oh, so
So
25.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta write this down. Oh, M is rate.
Mm-hmm. So M is your rate of change, which meant since it was $3 per mile, that was my rate. The y-intercept is the fixed cost or initial amount. So just to rent the car, it was $25, and then for every mile you drive, it's an additional $3.
So B is initial cost or initial amount, not cost.
Initial amount, fixed cost. Usually these words are used.
And then what does X represents the variable we're trying to find?
X or Y.
Okay.
Since this is $3 per mile, X would be miles.
So what does Y represent?
This was the cost to rent the car, so Y would be the cost.
So we're finding both X and Y.
Well, it depends. Usually you're given one and you find the other.
B,
Oh,
B
Right now we
is-
were just finding the equation.
okay.
Now
I'm
if you, okay, well the $3 was per mile, so that means X is miles.
Yeah, that's right. And then B was the initial cost, so that's 25, right?
And
Okay, then Y. What is
okay,
that?
Y, all of this is how much we have to pay to rent the car. So C is the cost to rent the car. It's the total cost. Because we were talking about renting the car. We know this is per mile, so that means X is miles.
Oh, plus $3 per mile. So Y, okay, so B includes the $25 and then Y includes both. The whole, okay.
The whole thing. I guess we could put total cost.
Thank you.
Now, when you're doing these, if you want to use variables that make more sense, since X is miles, we could let it be an M. And since Y is cost, we could let it be a C. You could have C equals 3M plus 25. So you can use variables that have more meaning. That way you remember M is miles, C is cost. You could do that, but if not, it's a good idea to write what they stand for. That way you remember when you're plugging values in.
Yeah, it's only weird because when I learned it like 3 years ago, it was I only learned it based off graphs. So we were just taught like where to plug in which line. We weren't actually taught what they meant.
Okay. Yeah, it's good to know the equation. That way you're just plugging it into the equation when you plug in values. And then we'll look at the lines when we deal with the graphs in the next chapter. Any questions on this part of it, setting it up? Okay. If we drive we drive 100 miles, what's the total cost? Yep. Is everyone, well, you have to decide whether you're plugging it in for X or Y. Or if you're using this, it's easier to see. This is miles, it's going in for M.
How did you get 325?
Okay, so we're going to plug the 100 in. Now, depending on which equation you're using, if you're using this one, M stood for miles. If you're looking this one, miles was the X. So it's going in for X.
Oh, okay.
So C equals 3 times 100 plus 25. Then we plug that into our calculator, although it's not too hard for that one in our head. It's $325. So to go 100 miles, it would cost you a total of $325.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so $3 per mile. Your rate is M times your 100 miles to get how many dollars each mile? Plus B. Y equals MX plus B. Initial amount. Okay, yeah, $24 to rent the car. To include that. Okay. All right. Okay, I got it. I got it.
Okay. What if we had, you have $500 allowance to rent a car? Like if your company says you have $500, you can't spend more than that to rent the car. How many miles can you go?
Is this based off the last?
Same equation.
Okay.
Wouldn't you just put the 500 where you put the C?
Exactly. Okay, someone needs to shut off their volume. Yes, because this is total cost for Y, or if you're using C, that's our cost, you would plug it in for the Y or the C, whichever one you're using. Because we want to find miles, which is our X. Any questions on that part?
So we're no longer trying to find the miles that we get to drive. We're just trying to budget with the money we have for miles.
Well, we have this much money. This is our cost.
that's our total cost right there is the 500. So we're just seeing what we can do with $500. That's our total.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
How many miles can we go? And so you're solving for X. How do you get rid of the 25?
Subtract.
Yes. You always want to think of the opposite. Since we're adding the 25 and we want to get this by itself first, we'll subtract it. And if you can just do it with your calculator in your head, you don't have to write this stuff out. But you get 475.
And then we divide the 3.
Yep. Since we're multiplying by 3, we do the opposite, which means divide. So if we take 475 divided by 3, so we can drive 158 miles. Any questions on that? Now, when you're talking about cost, you need to be careful when you're rounding. If we had 158.9 for X and we wanted to round to the nearest or to the mile, we cannot round up. because we only have $500. This uses all $500. If we had gotten this decimal, you have to drop the decimal. You cannot round up no matter what, because you don't have enough money. So if this was a 9 instead, it would still be 158 miles. So this is a case where if you end up with a high decimal, you still don't round up. You don't have enough money to round up. In this case, it was okay because it didn't round up. But if it had, so this is just an if this happened. Even if it was 158.5, we cannot round it up. Unless you find some more money somewhere.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so are we gonna get into slope graphs?
We are not going to graph by hand. The computer's going to do that for us.
That's rare.
I don't think there's anywhere we had to graph it by hand. I know there's not in this chapter. Trying to think. I don't think there's any.
All right. Yeah, I was at Rare Early College at the time, and I was going through quite a bit. I got sick, and I just missed that completely. So,
Oh, okay, yeah. No, well, okay. In the next chapter, we have to, and most of it we will be doing with the Excel, will graph it for us. There's a couple where we'll plot some points. And then what we need to do is find a line that will go right in between them. Now, when we're not using Excel, we are just going to draw data that goes between it. We're not going to have to search for that line. So you're not going to actually have to graph a line. You may have to draw a line between your data, but as for the slope, you won't have to do that. But I could show it. Oh, this problem's not too big. I guess we could do this one. When you're graphing, we'll just say this is 25. So when you're graphing a line, if we were going to graph this, the first thing you do is mark your y-intercept, which is at 25. So it hits the y-axis at 25. And then the slope, you want it as a fraction, and it's rise over run. So from this point, which is the y-intercept, so it hits the y-axis at 25, you go up 3 because it's positive, up 3 and right 1. And then you just draw your line. So you use your y-intercept, and then the slope is rise over run. Up 3 over 1, and draw your line.
all right.
Yeah, it's not bad. We'll do a couple as we're going through these, we'll graph them. Okay. The other thing you need to make sure you understand is how to explain the y-intercept and the slope. I don't want to squeeze it. Three x plus 25. Okay. So from the same problem, X was the number of miles when we rented the car, and Y is total cost. There will be problems where you need to explain the y-intercept and the slope. The y-intercept is 25. It is also the value when X is 0. Remember, X is miles. So if we drive 0 miles, the total cost is 25. So what the y-intercept tells you is at time 0, or in this case at 0 miles, we still cost $25. So if we rent the car and then decide not to drive it, we have a cost of $25. So if we drive 0 miles or no miles, the cost is $25. Any questions on that? So what could happen? Oh, go ahead.
Given you if given if someone was to drive at 0 miles, it costs you $25 to rent the car. Would you start the point of the graph that you would start at? Would that be 0? Then you go up 25 over.
No, the y-intercept is what you're doing is explaining what this point means. You're just explaining this point. You're not graphing anything. You're explaining this point. So this point is if you drive no miles, it's going to cost $25 because this would be cost and this would be miles. But you don't need the graph. You only need the equation to explain it. But it's just explaining this point only.
Oh. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna get the hang of this.
So if we drive 0 miles, and at first I was always thinking, well, if it's sitting in the parking lot and you don't take it off, then you shouldn't have to pay for it. But what can happen, like Hertz, they could bring the car to when my car got wrecked, they could bring their rental car to my driveway. It could sit there for 4 days, but I don't end up using it. And then they come and pick it up. I'd only have to pay the $25 because I didn't drive it anywhere. But at least I had that security. If I needed it, it was there. But if I didn't drive it, then I only pay the $25. And so that would be a case where that could happen. Any questions on that? The y-intercept sometimes does not make sense. In this case, it would. I'll show you one where it doesn't necessarily make sense. But when you're explaining the y-intercept, you take 0 of whatever X stands for, in this case, no miles or 0 miles. The cost is your y-intercept. Now we also need to be able to explain the slope. So we'll do the slope and then we'll make another problem and do it again. Our slope in this case was the 3. But when you're explaining a slope, you need a fraction because it's the change in y over the change in x. So just like when we graphed it, we put it in a fraction. It's change in y, and y is the cost, and x is the miles. So each time we increase by 1 mile, the cost goes up by $3. Each additional mile driven, the total cost increases by $3.
So basically, the graph just explains what the data said.
Yes.
All right.
It like shows a visual representation of what the actual data means.
Yeah, and it shows you how fast it's growing. A lot of times the graph is better to compare with other. Maybe this was Hertz, and then we had another company that maybe the initial fee started higher, but then the mile rate was lower. And so by looking at the graph, you could see that even though the starting amount is higher for, I don't know, can't think of another car right in place right now. Hertz and, I don't know, AAA. And so maybe that one starts higher, but its rate is lower. So then if you're going a lot of miles, this one's going to cost a lot more than this one. And so by looking at the graph, that's one way of seeing it. So even though our startup fee is $27, in the long run, this graph is below. So AAA after so many miles is going to be cheaper than Hertz. And that's one way of using your graph. So this rate is going faster than this one. Any questions on that? Okay. Any questions on this part? So when you're doing this, always look at your X first. We're increasing by 1 mile, and our cost, because it's positive, increases by $3. Let's look at another one. Julie makes $300 plus 12% of her sales. Write an equation showing her total income. So if Julie makes $300 plus 12% of her sales, write an equation showing her total income. Do we want to use X and Y, or do we want to use S for sales and I for income? Okay, we'll use S and I. You need to be careful because sometimes S's look like 5s.
Would it be, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark with this one.
Okay.
Would it be 3S equals, no. Right.
So we're using I equals, and then we need to decide which one is the rate.
Oh, that's definitely 12.
Yep.
0.12.
0.12 exactly, because we have to write it as a decimal.
So are we just doing like I equals MS plus B?
Yep.
Okay. We're just changing the letters because just for the sake of like the names and stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can go either way. I asked, and one person put S and I, so that's why I used that. Just be careful. Sometimes my S's look like 5s. So this was 12% of the sales, so that was our rate, and we have to write it as a decimal, and that means then the 300 is this one.
Yeah.
There was another question I want to go back to, but is there any questions setting this up?
Not for me.
Okay. They had asked, why would the price be higher but the rate be lower? It's all competition. So what this one would be, it looks to be like we're going up 1 over 1. So the slope is probably 1x plus 27. And so it's a competition. Yeah, maybe I'm starting up a little higher, but I'm only charging $1 for every mile that you drive, and they're charging $3. And so that's why it's just competition. That's why the rates would be different. Maybe this one would start, I only did it at 27, but maybe it would start at 40, but then only charge $1 a mile. So if you're going really far, you want this one. If you're only going down the street and back, you want this one. But it's just a competition.
Oh,
Okay,
that's pretty interesting.
back to this one.
Oh, actually,
Did you have a question about this one?
I did. Kind of still do. So let's say those are real life prices. Like those are what we can count on if we were to go to either one of those companies.
Okay, and so this one's the AAA, and this one is Hertz.
AAA starts out at 27, it's at 25.
Mm-hmm.
Given that it's competition, um, the 27 that they put down and the 25, the 27 and 25 that they put down, um, actually, never mind. I think I just figured it out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, usually if it's going to be something, this would be a lot higher. And this would be $1. But you can tell if you're only going 5 miles, this one's going to be cheaper than this one. But if, well, no matter what, this is probably the better one.
I was thinking in terms of like something around the down payment, but so that
Oh, okay. This is just renting the car. It's not. If you were purchasing and you're putting down a down payment and then paying so much interest on it, you could find the total of a car. Yeah.
well,
Is there any questions on the renting one though? Okay. So this one we're talking about her sales and her income. So let's explain the y-intercept. This is a plus. The y-intercept is the b. It's the part that's by itself. So it's a 300. So look back at the other problems and don't say any answers out loud yet. Let everyone try and write down what the y-intercept is standing for. So the Does everyone have something written or a thought in their mind? So the y-intercept is 300 because it's the part by itself. The y-intercept is when x is 0. In this case, x is our sales. So what it means is if Julie has no sales, she makes $300. And a lot of companies work this way. I used to work for True Green Chemlon, and the sales department had a fixed rate, and then they made a certain percentage on their sales. So for that week, if they had no sales, then they only made that lower amount. So if you need more than 300 a month, you need to make your sales. And so that's what the y-intercept tells you. If you make no sales, you'll have an income of $300.
Wow. That's not weekly, that's a month. Like that can get pretty tough. That's a serious.
Yeah, definitely. Some are higher than, I mean, I made this number up, but weekly, it might be a little higher than this. But if they're trying to make sure you get sales,
Yeah.
and then let's see the slope. Well, the slope is the 0.12. We could use it as a percent to explain it in the problem. I think, or do we want it as a percent or a dollar? Now, we could do it this way, and this would be the income, which is 12 cents for each dollar in sales. Or if we want to get this to dollars, we could multiply by 100 over 100. That way we're talking about an income of $12 when you sell 100. So you could do each dollar you make in sales, you increase by 12 cents, Or if you want to get into just dollars, you can multiply by 100 to make it a 12. So then every $100 in sales, you make $12 in income. So if numbers seem too small and you'd rather make them larger to explain them, because this was 12 cents, we could multiply by 100 to make it dollars. So if we went with this one, it would say each additional dollar in sales increases her income by 12 cents. Or if we use this one, for every $100 in sales, she increases her income by $12. Neither one is wrong. It's just this is a little easier to see the amount. When you're talking 12 cents, it seems like nothing. But like at True Green, a $100 sale is not that off because well, at the time, some yards were only $25 per application. 4 applications in a year, you made a $100 sale. Now, probably the minimum is about $60 a yard. 4 of them would be $240, and then you're getting 12% of that. So it's not too hard to hit that $100. Working with only $1, most accounts, depending on what you're selling, we're in the hundreds.
That's pretty interesting. Like even if it's just for a little bit, I don't want to work in that type of environment. Just like get the general idea, the general like just to see what it's like. Like that's actually like pretty interesting. Like
I think
if you want to make money, you're gonna have
it's
to like
interesting. Now there's accounts that are much bigger than this. Where my brother works, he has accounts where they sell, it's called doors. So for instance, if you go into Best Buy, they have cameras and things set up inside the machines and inside the doors when you walk in, and it counts how many people came in, and then it counts of those, say 50 people that came in 1 hour, how many of those were sold something, and then who sold them, each of them. And that's what his company does. It counts all of this for people. So you're talking about $100,000 accounts. If you're getting 12% of it, or even 5% of it, that's a pretty good amount. And so losing an account like that can really hurt you. And that's what's happening to a lot of these companies right now. But this is just a small variation of what happens to the big accounts.
yeah. Don't mind me, I tend to get like this. I want to work there for a little bit. That seems that's amazing.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Best Buy I don't know if Best Buy works on commission. But you can even think about, now it would be a little harder equation because you'd have a couple of variables, but a waitress makes a lot less than minimum wage. At one point, they were making $2 an hour plus tips. And so it would have 2 parts because you're making $2 an hour and then plus your tips, that would be another variable. But if you knew you made $200 in tips in a week, then $2 per hour, seeing how many hours you work. So it would be a little more involved equation than just these, but it's another case where you would see it.
Yeah.
Is there any questions on that?
Mm-hmm. No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
like,
go on to an electric bill. Here it is. This form, I put it online for you. That way, if you don't want to write all the parts out, it is on Blackboard under week 8. It's the first attachment. For some reason, this shifted over though. So this kilowatt hours should be here. So it just got shifted. I guess I can move it over on mine. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay. But when you get an electric bill, they usually look like this. Sometimes things might be in a different order. Electric, gas, water, they all work like this. But sometimes where the ratings are and stuff is in a different spot. But it will have an address and your name. And then it will have your meter reading. Kind of think of it like the miles in your car. You know how after you go or at the end of the month, your miles don't go back to 0. They continuously go on. And that's the same thing with your meter. At the end of the month, like the end of September, this one was 67,100. At the end of October, it was 67,250. Not because you used that much, but because it continued. Just like the miles in your car. So if we wanted to find how many kilowatt hours Penny's bill was, we would subtract these. So she didn't go a whole 67,100 in September and another 67,250. It's the difference between the two. So if we subtract them, she used 150 kilowatt hours. So
and
think about the miles in your car. If you were at 10,000 and the end of the month you're at 13,000, you didn't go another 13,000 miles. You only went 3,000. It keeps a continuous tab on it. And that's the same thing with the meter reading.
imagine that.
And that's why usually once a month you see them walking around house to house to scan the meters. They'll usually make an estimate. Maybe they'll come every other month sometimes. It depends. I'm on a monthly fee, and then at the end of the year, they check how much I owed, and if I'm over, then I have to pay money. If I paid too much, then they don't charge me. So January, I didn't owe anything for my electric bill, so that it can even out and then it starts again. So they do have these monthly ones, but you don't have to pay it monthly. You don't have to pay it automatically is what I meant to say. You can pay it per use. But is there any questions on getting the kilowatt hours? So you can even read your meter reading and then the next month see when it comes and see if it matches. So that's the kilowatt hours that were used on the month of October. To write an equation, and it's linear, we'll use C and K so we know what they stand for. C is cost, and it would be the amount or the slope times K plus RB. So we're looking for the slope and the y-intercept. Now, if we look at this amount, they don't just put everything together. And if you look at a bill, there's a lot more than these. I just picked a few of them. There was about 12 different things that they charge per kilowatt hour on mine. But notice this first one says customer charge $8.52, but it's not per kilowatt hour. Notice these ones are per kilowatt hour. This one's not. This is a starting fee or a fixed cost.
So would that be at B then, or?
So that's your B. We know C equals, we're looking for M, and we just found B, which was 8.52. So this one wasn't multiplied times kilowatt hours. It's a fixed cost, so it was B. These are all multiplied by kilowatt hours. All of these added together is my slope. $30, $40, $50, $60, $67.67.
That's what I got.
So if we add these up, we'll get 0.67, and that's our slope because that's per kilowatt hour.
Wait. So, in hopes of understanding how a electric bill works,
It's okay.
seeing that we got 0.67, would I have to equal 1 in order for us to get the 8.52 charge?
At least one, yes. Or no. If you use no kilowatt hours, which is what we're going to explain right here, the y-intercept is the 8.52, which means when x is 0, which is our kilowatt hours, if we use no kilowatt hours, it's going to cost $8.52. So if you left the house, say you went to Florida for a month, and you had your electricity shut off so that you used no kilowatt hours, when you come home, you're still going to have a bill for $8.52. So even though you're not using it, there's monthly fees on there.
All right. So there's the point, seeing that the transmission and renewable energy supplier chargers and the 0.12 kilowatt hours, seeing that those are all add up to 0.67, what does the 0.67 do?
Okay. Well, let's write this one down first. Kilowatt hours. Since we just explained this one. So if no kilowatt hours are used, the cost is $8.52. The 67 cents is the slope. I'm going to use cents. Remember, slope is our change in y. Y is the cost over our change in x, and x is the kilowatt hours. I changed this to cents since I wasn't using any dollars. It's easier to talk about it in cents. So it's saying each additional kilowatt hour, my cost goes up by 67 cents.
And the rates at which those happen are different. So why might be 0.15, 0.15, 0.25, and 0.12 for this? If I was to go out to random states, Nebraska, the rates would be different.
Yes. And actually, there's different companies now that you can get with, and their rates will be different. I only put a few of them, and these could have changed since I made this up a few years ago. It's probably higher now. But yeah, these are only a few of the rates. And like the renewable energy, there's I think a recycling one, and I mean there's, look at your electric bill or your parents' electric bill and see all the different little fees that are hidden in there.
Will do.
But all of those are per kilowatt hour, so they would be our slope. To explain it then, each additional kilowatt hour used increases, because it's positive, increases the cost by 67 cents. So if you're on a budget and you're telling yourself, I can't use more than 100 kilowatt hours, then you know once you hit that, if I'm going to use more, I know it's going to cost 67 cents for each additional hour that I use. So it kind of tells you. Another thing is some people aren't sure if they should use electric or gas to heat. And if you are using electric and it seems, I mean, this doesn't seem so bad, but if it seems really high, then maybe you want to switch to gas or check that price and see which one's better. Okay, what is Penny's cost this month? Any questions on explaining the slope or the y-intercept?
I don't know questions at all for you.
Cool. All right, if we want to find her total cost, then we take our equation, and she used 150 kilowatt hours. Since we used K, we know right where it goes, right in here. So our cost is 0.67 times the 150 kilowatt hours plus our 852. And then you would just plug that into your calculator and find our total cost. You get $109.02. Any questions on that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. There is one on Blackboard that set up similar to this. And there'll be one on the test that will be set up similar to this. Okay. This is a tax table. Now this one is married filing separate. There's married filing joint. There's individual. There's a lot of different ones. This is just one that's similar to the one in your book. For the discussion board, you need to find one different than this one and do a similar problem and then discuss it. So this one. What this tells you is, notice these are different brackets. So depending on how much you make, you look in here and find the value. And for instance, this is 85,000. We'd see which of these intervals the 85,000 fell into. Notice 85 is between these two. So it would fall into this bracket. But the thing is, you're not, they call this the 24% bracket, but you're not paying 24% on all of your income. Only the part over 82,500. Like if we fell into this bracket here, we'd pay 10% of this one, and then anything over that, we pay 12%. Notice if we find 10% of the 9,525, that's going to give us $952.50, which is right here. So what they're doing is they're finding what the lower bracket was to make it easier for you to find. Not all of them do that, but this one does. So 85,000 is in this bracket. That means I have to pay $14,089.50 plus 24% of, means multiply, the amount over 82,500. So it's this amount plus 24% of, if I made 85,000, I'm going to subtract the 82,500. So I'm only paying 24% of 2,500. So you just do whatever that row says. It says $14,889.50 plus 24% of, means multiply, the amount over 82,500. So I subtracted them. That was the amount over. Then we plug that into our calculator. We have to pay $14,689.50. We'll do another one. Any questions on that one?
Wait, how did you get $14,689.50?
I calculated this.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So at the 24% bracket, you're only paying 24% of this one. Any questions on that?
Not necessarily on that.
Okay, let's try 50,000. So if you're making 50,000, if we number these brackets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we make $50,000, which bracket are we in?
You're in bracket number 3.
So we're in this one. Okay, go ahead and find out how much we owe. When you have an amount, go ahead and type it in, but don't say it out loud yet. I just want to give people time, but that way I know.
How did we know that 50,000 goes into bracket 3?
Okay. So 50,000 would be between these two numbers.
Oh, okay. All right, I get it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it put us in this bracket. I don't know who came up with them. That's a good question. Maybe you can put it in your discussion board. So we're 50,000 put us in this bracket here. But we're only paying 22% of the amount over the 38,700. So we have to find out how much is over. So you want to find out how much you went over. Well, I went over 11,300. So making this extra 11,300, it put me into the next bracket. But I only have to pay the part that went over. The other part stays in the lower brackets. And that, I think I wrote, oh no, that's right, 4,000. When we just calculate this, and you should get, are you getting $6,939.50?
Yeah.
Now, of course, this isn't including, there's lots of write-offs on things now. This one is just a basic, how much will you have to pay? But like if you have kids, then certain things are, so much is written off. Right now, all those checks that we've got, I don't know if you've gotten them, but your parents probably got them from the government. Those have to be added into our income and we have to pay taxes on those. So even though they said they're giving us this $2,500 and another $2,500 or whatever it was, you have to pay taxes on that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my brother was complaining because, well, he's in the, just income wise, they're in the 6th bracket between him and his wife. But then by getting this money, he was worried it was going to put him into another bracket. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're not paying all of it. You're only paying the amount over the 300,000. So if it's only a couple thousand, it's not that big a deal. It's not all of it being charged above it, which he didn't understand at the time. Let's try another one. How about if you make 240,000? See what bracket it puts you in, and then set up your equation, and then plug it in.
Would it go into bracket number 6?
Yep. 240,000 is between the 200,000 and the 300,000, so we would now be in the 6th bracket, or the 35% rate. That's why also when you are in these higher ones, it's good to check both ways like married filing separately, these rates are different than if you're married filing together. And so one way may be better than another. If it pushes you too high up because your spouse makes a lot, it might be better to separate them. But I usually check both ways, but state seems to be so much higher if I file separately that it's not worth it. We always file joint. Okay, so we said it was the 6th bracket, which means $45,689.50 plus 35% of the amount over 200,000. So we're paying 35% on the 40,000. Any questions on that?
Nope, not for me.
Okay. We have a little bit of time. Let's see if Alexa knows. Alexa, who created tax brackets?
Something I found on the web. According to Intuit.com, all income taxes imposed on a federal level in the U.S. are structured within this tiered system of tax brackets, which are controlled by the Internal Revenue Service, also known as the IRS.
That's interesting.
Alexa, who created income taxes?
Here's something I found on the web. According to Wikipedia.org, one of the first recorded taxes on income was the salad and tithe introduced by Henry II in 1188 to raise money for the Third Crusade.
There we go. So
Nice.
one thing they found was in 1188, Henry II needed to raise money for a crusade and he started taxes.
That's very interesting.
Sometimes she's kind of smart and other times I'm not so sure. But any questions?
Oh, not for me.
Okay. Yeah, I like this section. Well, I like most of the sections in this book.